All right, welcome everyone to our presentation on creating accessible websites. Thanks for joining us. We would like to give you a reminder that the chat feature can often interfere with screen readers if there are excessive chat messages. So for that and for organization purposes, we ask you to only use that for questions. There are also going to be links going there, so it'll be useful for other people to be able to quickly look through chat and find useful information. Our presenters today come from across this land, living and working in what we now know as Canada. We respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples, and will continue to honor the commitment to self-determination and sovereignty we have made to Indigenous nations and peoples. So presenting today, we have members of our accessibility team for the National Network for Equitable Library Service, or NNELS. We have Simon Jager, that's me, Melanie Shee, and David Kottman. So for a quick overview of what we're going to be doing, we're going to talk about why you might want to make a website accessible. Then we're going to talk about the 8 components of accessible website creation. We're going to get into some explanations and demonstrations, a deep dive into accessibility testing, and then we'll take any questions you might have. So why might you want to make a website accessible? Well, there's a lot of legislation, current and future, about accessible websites, and you may want to comply with that legislation. Maybe you're passionate about accessibility and you want to make sure your digital content and spaces are usable and accessible to everyone. And last but not least, because accessibility isn't a privilege, it's the right thing to do. Now we're going to hear from Melody about accessible websites.
So for website accessibilities can be broken up into a few basic areas. Going to talk about semantic HTML, keyboard navigation, forms and input field, tables, contrast and readability, multimedia, clear communication, and most importantly, testing and validation.
So semantic HTML, what is this? Essentially, semantic HTML is making sure that the underlying code of the web page is structured in a logical and proper way. This allows screen readers to interpret the web page and know what's on it. So, for example, the web page should include headings, landmarks, links and buttons, and proper navigation menus. A lot of websites are visually designed well, but the underlying code of the page isn't designed well. So this can cause screen readers to read the page very badly. Now let's hear a quick demo of a well-structured web page using a screen reader.
On a web page, there are a lot of different controls that web designers can choose to use or not use. And some of these controls add visual information to the page, and some of them just give it markup to allow screen reader users to navigate it, and some do both. For instance, headings are something that benefits everybody because it gives the page structure. But the other thing they're useful for is letting screen reader users navigate through the page quickly. So using VoiceOver, I can toggle heading navigation.
Headings.
And then move through the available headings on the page.
Course materials for educators. Heading level 1.
So that's a level 1 heading. That's a top level, highest level there is heading that usually headlines the page. If I keep going down by heading.
Find materials by subject. Heading level 2. Course packs. Heading level 2. Main. Land.
Now, if we stop here and then use the swipe right gesture, we'll actually start navigating from this point onward.
Supporting teaching materials. Heading level 3. Bullet. Use and adapt lesson plans. Bullet. Engage students with discussion topics.
Let's go find the accessibility heading.
Quality. Design. Relevant. Search. Academic. Customize. Accessibility. Heading level 2.
So now we can navigate forward from here.
Access for all. Bullet. Materials are open to the public and free forever. Bullet. Easily see which materials meet BC campus accessibility criteria.
Okay. Another thing you can navigate by is links. This is why it's generally considered bad practice to have link text like click here without explaining what the surrounding text is, because some users will be navigating by links and they won't know what they're clicking here to do. So let's go back to the top of the page and find the course materials by subject heading.
Find materials by subject. Heading level 2.
Now, if we go to links,
Links.
we're going to be navigating down by subjects.
Academic/career 11 results. Art and design 3 results. Biological/physical sciences 24 results.
And I could double tap on any of those links to open the results page for that subject. This is just a quick overview of some of the navigation items that are available. There are a lot more of them, like landmarks and form controls, which are also used well here.
So in terms of elements, it's important to ensure that all elements on the page have unique and descriptive labels that convey their purpose or content. This can include buttons, so your buttons should have labels that explain what they do. For instance, if you have a search button that looks like a magnifying glass, labeling it magnifying glass might not actually tell someone what it does, because they may not realize when using a screen reader that search buttons are magnifying glasses. So the button should be labeled search. Links should be descriptive. We'll get to that in a moment. Images should have labels or alt text on them that explain what they do or what they depict. And text fields should have labels so that when people are navigating the page and entering information, they know which field to enter the information into. So let's have a quick demo of non-descriptive links.
One of the ways we navigate web pages as screen reader users is by going to the next or previous link. This is a really easy way of skipping directly to action items without reading the surrounding text, which you probably want to read the text if you're not familiar with the web page, but sometimes you just want to get something done really quickly, and that should be possible. Unfortunately, a lot of websites use what are called non-descriptive links, where if you move to the link and don't hear the context surrounding it, you won't understand what the link is doing. This is the case on the live version of the website in this slideshow area. Let's move to the next link and see what happens.
Learn more link.
Learn more link. Next link.
1/5 grouping learn more link.
We know we're going to different links because it speaks things like 1/5.
2/5 grouping learn more link. 3/5 grouping learn more link.
It also occasionally reads text automatically, but it isn't necessarily the text associated with the current link, and it isn't very predictable. So we can read upward to figure out what the link pertains to.
We're looking for focus group participants to share their feedback on library accessibility.
Oh, interesting. I have feedback. Let's keep going up.
Heading level 2 help make RPL more accessible.
So we're essentially reading the page backwards, going to the text, then going to the heading above the text. If that text were multiple lines, we would have to read the bottom line first. So that's not very intuitive, and it's a very common problem, also very easy to fix, which is great. This is what we mean by non-descriptive links.
So in short, if your link refers to a specific page, don't label it click here or learn more or just here. That's a very common thing. Use the surrounding text to make a more informative link. Now we'll hear from Melody about keyboard navigation.
Great. So now that we learned about elements, we know that links, text fields, and buttons, they all should be labeled. And the other very important thing is that they need to be accessible with a keyboard. So what does it mean that elements need to be, that can be accessed with keyboard navigation? So I need to be able to reach my links, my buttons, etc. With keys, without a mouse, without a touchscreen. I can simply use the keyboard, use common keys like tabs or arrows or some other stuff to get to the element. And next we're gonna look at a demo, and instead of showing you what a proper website is like for keyboard navigation, we'll go the other way, show you what it's like when your elements are not easily accessible with the keyboard. Let's look at why keyboard navigation is so important by going through this terribly made form. I'm on the top of the form. So first I am going to use my arrows to go through everything in the form and see what I need to fill out.
Row 2, column 1, full name edit has autocomplete.
Okay, so I need my name.
Column 2, clickable what is this?
Okay, and it has a little hint here. If I click on it, it'll probably tell me what this is.
Row 3, column 1, email edit has autocomplete. Column 2, clickable what is this? Row 4, column 1, book title.
Okay,
Yes,
so it
edit
has
has
the same
autocomplete.
thing for emails and book
Column
titles.
row 5, column 1, location.
And
Radio button, local library,
location.
radio home, radio
Oh.
other.
Cool. So let's actually fill out the form here.
Out of table heading level 1.
Let's go back
Table.
to the top.
Row 2, column 1, edit has autocomplete blank.
Right. So I happen to know that this is to fill out my name.
Row 3, column 1, edit has autocomplete
Oh,
blank.
wait. It skipped the little hint. So if I were using tabs instead of arrows to go through this form, it would not tell me what this is. So let's give it more fake data here. Email,
Row 4,
titles,
row 5, column 1,
and
radio
I
button.
can check one of these. Okay, so yeah, if I use tabs, it seems to skip over those little hints, but if I navigate it with arrows, or in this case, this form is inside a table, which is not very nice,
Row 5, column 2, clickable what is this?
I can definitely focus on these what is this.
Row 4, clickable what is this? Row 3, click, row 4, row 5, clickable
And-
what is this? Row 6, column 1 through 2, clickable submit.
Ah, missed something else from earlier. There is a submit button at the end, but if I
Radio button not checked 3 of 3. Book request form button.
tab through the elements, again, it misses the submit button. Okay, so that hopefully was enough to show you how terrible a form can be if sometimes I can miss a few important controls. And next we're gonna talk about keyboard shortcuts. The most important thing is for keyboard shortcuts on websites to not interfere with screen readers. A lot of common ones are like to use arrow keys or space or tab or enter, escape. Like there's a lot more. And while it's convenient for a lot of use cases when having screen reader on, they might try to fight with each other and your computer is not going to know exactly which one to follow. And again, we'll have a bad form demo to show you what it's like to have keyboard shortcuts that try to do two different things.
Form.
Let's look at how bad keyboard shortcuts can interfere with screen reader. So I'm at the top of this form again. I'm currently focused on the name field.
A-N-A-M-E blank.
So let's change the name to my name. Right, now that I finished editing, next I want to move out of focus of this field to check what I entered for the other ones. So one way to do that is escape. But if I wasn't sure I did it again. And the form disappeared. This is because a lot of websites implemented the keyboard shortcut to close out of a dialog, and one common way to do it is to have escape. And it might be convenient for some users, but when using a screen reader, this could mean that it's trying to fight with the shortcut that already exists, which is to move out of focus.
It's important to implement visible focus indicators, particularly for people with low vision and those who use keyboard for navigation. They can be a border sometimes around an element, or sometimes it can be a highlight next to an element, such as an arrow looking at a text box. Here's a short demo coming next that you can get a good idea of what they look like. Visible focus indicators are important for me as a reader with low vision. They help me in a number of ways. They help me know where I am on the page. They help me find the buttons and text boxes that I need to click or enter info into. And they help me move through the most important parts of the web page efficiently and quickly. Now we'll have a look at how the focus indicator works in the search fields of the web page. I'll move through the page for you. Here we go. And now, as you see, we're in the search area, and I'll move into the search box and I'll enlarge that for you. When navigating to the search box with a mouse or by keyboard, the form text boxes become outlined in yellow. This helps me quickly identify where I am on the page. This is also helpful on long forms or when there is a lot of information on the web page, especially when I have it magnified.
Great. Thanks for David for the demo. And next we're going to talk about forms and input fields, and those include text fields and checkboxes, radio buttons, drop downs, etc. And one important thing is to label all the form controls appropriately. That is that I don't need surrounding text or to look at other headings or something else around the control to understand what it does. And the other important part is to provide error messages. And they need to be helpful and does not get in the way of when I'm just trying to navigate between the elements. And so next we're gonna look at a demo on what it's like when filling out form, filling out form that does not have proper label and does not provide helpful error messages.
This page has been designed to be intentionally difficult to use with a screen reader as an example of some of the issues that can happen with forms and input validation. So we have this single button on the page.
Button, book request form.
And if I press the button, the form silently opens. This is strike one of many. Usually in these kinds of cases, a dialog should open and take keyboard focus so that the screen reader user is alerted to the fact that something has happened.
Heading Level 1 Inaccessible Form Demo.
Alright,
Welcome to the world of div soup.
let's just read this through quickly.
Table with 6 rows and 2 columns. Heading Level 2. Fill out the form.
Strike 2. Don't use tables for layout purposes.
Full name, edit, has autocomplete.
We have these form fields on one side,
What is this?
and then these what is this links on the other. That's strike 3. These what is this buttons are actually not proper controls at all. This is an example of lack of semantic HTML, because these should be links or buttons, and they're not.
Email, edit, has autocomplete. What is this? Book title, S, edit. What is this? Location. Radio button, not checked. Local library. Radio button, checked. Home. Radio button, not checked. Other. What is this? Submit.
The submit button is also not a correct button. It's just a clickable control that reacts to a JavaScript event. So, other than that, that looks okay, but this is pretty deceptive. Let's actually try and fill this form out.
Out of table. Heading Level 1 Inaccessible Form Demo.
So I'm going to use my form field command to jump to the next form field.
Table with 6 rows and 2 columns. Edit, has autocomplete.
Uh-oh, It didn't say the name of the form field. That means that even though there is a text label next to it, the field itself doesn't have a label on it. This is a pretty common mistake. I see it quite regularly. Let's go into focus mode.
Focus mode.
Now, just to make sure that we're at the right form field, let's press Tab.
SAD form demo Firefox Nightly. The page at file / says dialog required. OK button.
Ah, so it's popped up a dialog saying that it's required. It doesn't tell me what's required, of course, that would make too much sense. It just tells me that something is required. This is very disruptive to somebody who's trying to keyboard navigate through the form without actually filling it out. It should just warn the user that each field is required, and if they try and submit it without the required data, it should put their keyboard focus back to the missing field. So if I press OK, my keyboard focus is now thrown off, so I'm not sure where I am. I think if I hit Shift Tab,
SAD form demo document. Table.
it's going to
Edit
do the same
has
thing
autocomplete
again.
blank.
Nope, no it didn't. Okay, that's great. Let's see if I can figure out where I am.
Browse mode.
I'm going to go back into browse mode and review the page.
Heading level 2 fill out the form. Full name. Edit. Has
Okay.
focus
I'm on the full name,
blank.
so I'm just going to type test, because it doesn't have full name validation, of course.
Edit. Has autocomplete blank.
I think that's email, but I can't be sure because it's not labeled. Let's check with browse mode again.
Browse what is this? Email. Edit. Has autocomplete. Edit. Has autocomplete. Focus mode.
Test at test.me.
Browse mode.
I'm just going to go ahead and go back into browse mode so that I can see what I'm moving to.
Edit. Has autocomplete. What is this? Book title. S. Edit. Has autocomplete. Edit. Has autocomplete. Focus mode.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Browse mode.
Okay. And these radio buttons for location.
Radio button. Not checked. Radio button. Checked. Radio button. Not checked.
Are also not labeled. The text labels are next to them, but it could be confusing to figure out which text label is associated with which radio button.
Radio button. Location. Radio button. Not checked. Local library.
If you're reading this line by line, how do you know whether the radio button is associated with the text above it or below it? In other words,
Radio button. Checked.
is this one that's checked
Local library.
the local library,
Radio button. Checked.
which is the line above it,
Home.
or home, which is the line below it? It's easy to tell if you start from the top
Radio button. Not checked.
and realize that the radio
Location.
buttons come first. But if you don't remember that, this can be pretty confusing.
Radio button. Not checked. Checked. Local library. Radio button. Not checked. Home. Radio button. Not checked. Other. Focus mode.
I'm going to go back into focus mode to demonstrate the following.
Book request form button.
So, I've tabbed from the radio buttons, and it's now brought me back to the button that invoked the form to begin with. This means that the submit button, which, as we discussed, is not a button, isn't in tab order, so somebody can't keyboard navigate to it correctly.
Table.
That's obviously a big problem. I'm going to have to go back into browse mode.
Browse. Local library. Radio button. Home. Radio button. Other. What is this? Submit.
Go all the way through all those controls and press the submit button.
SAD form demo Firefox Nightly. The page at file / says dialog submit. OK button.
And that's just a piece of test text. Try saying that 10 times quickly. That is there to basically tell me that I've submitted the text. So there's an example of some things that can go horribly wrong with form fields and what we do about them.
SAD form demo document.
Okay, so that's probably enough on forms for the moment. Let's talk about CAPTCHAs, which technically do fall into the category of forms. CAPTCHAs are those things you see on web pages that ask you to enter the characters you see in a really distorted image of letters, or check off all the squares that have traffic lights, or anything like that. Anything that requires you to visually look at something and interpret it. CAPTCHA is actually an acronym. It stands for Completely Automated Public Turing Test to Tell Computers and Humans Apart. And it's basically that. It's meant to use the interpretation of the human mind to basically prevent spam. So if people can interpret it and computers can't, then presumably an automated script can't go through and spam the website with new signups or other things. The problem with these things is that they rely on visual interpretation. So a totally blind person or a person with low enough vision won't be able to successfully complete the CAPTCHA because they might not be able to see it well enough or at all. Screen readers in particular are an interpretation layer between the user and the computer. They're basically a computer program. So for the same reason that spam scripts can't complete CAPTCHAs, screen readers, and therefore the users of screen readers, can't complete CAPTCHAs. There are a few solutions to this. The audio CAPTCHA is basically the auditory version of that, where they have a lot of numbers or letters in a recording with a lot of background noise over it. And I really wish we had thought to include a video demo of that, because it's very interesting what some of the companies have done and the way they sound. This can cause problems for people with auditory processing disorders, and of course for deaf-blind people who can't complete either the visual or the auditory version of it. So now there are versions like the invisible CAPTCHA, where if the web page notices you doing something unusual, it might ask you to complete a CAPTCHA, but otherwise it relies on typical keyboard and mouse usage to determine that you're a real person. And it's important to implement something like this if you want full accessibility on your web page when you're trying to prevent spam. So there's another demo of an inaccessible CAPTCHA on an unfortunately popular website. Let's have a watch of that.
I'm on the Wikipedia sign-up page where you create an account so you can contribute to articles. So let's go through this process quickly.
Username, help me choose, edit, has autocomplete, enter your username.
Let's say tester1,
Password, edit, protected, enter a
password1,
confirm password.
password1,
Email address, recommended, edit, has autocomplete, enter your email address.
tester@nels.ca. By the way, I'm using the tab key to navigate this form. There are other ways which we'll see in a moment.
CAPTCHA security check, edit, enter the text you see on the image.
Uh-oh, the text I see. Let's go back to the email text field and then read down from there.
Email address, recommended, browse mode.
So now I'm going to engage the screen reader's reading mode.
Please look for an email from us to verify your address.
Okay.
Email is, to recover your account if you lose your password. To protect the wiki against automated account creation, we kindly ask you to enter the words that appear below in the box. Visited link, more info. CAPTCHA security check. Refresh. Edit, enter the text you see on the image. Can't see the image? Link, request an account.
Well, that's unfortunate. So Wikipedia's current process is, if you can't read the CAPTCHA, which a screen reader cannot, you have to request an account from them by filling out a form. This is certainly better than nothing, but it's definitely still an inaccessible CAPTCHA. If I turn the screen off,
Temporary screen curtain, enabled until next restart.
like this, now you can see what I see.
Edit, enter the text you see on the image.
Can you see any text on the image? I definitely can't.
I'd like to say for a record that Wikipedia is currently in discussions about how to solve this problem, but they've also been in discussion since 2006. So I'm not really sure if that's going anywhere or not. Anyway, this is an example of really not great accessibility. There aren't great solutions that are open source, which is why Wikipedia is having this problem, but it's still a problem. At any rate, let's hear from Melody about tables.
Right. I'm sure you'd heard enough about Forbes and CAPTCHA and all that stuff. And so next, let's talk about tables. In the form demo before, Simon mentioned that we don't want to use tables for layout purposes. And we also want to ensure that tables are marked up as headers. I know that in the old days, when HTML was not standardized, tables were used for styling and just to position your text and buttons and stuff like that, without using too much styling. But now that there are rules around them, I want to make sure we're using tables for semantic purposes. For example, a calendar would be good in a table, while that form we showed you earlier would not be tabular data. Next, let's talk about contracts with David.
very important to maintain sufficient color contrast between text and background to ensure readability. Same goes for buttons and other images, and also all different controls on the page. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, state that the contrast ratio should be at least 4.5 to 1 between the background and foreground elements, comply with AA requirements. Here's a short video to give you an example of the contrast problem. It's important for low vision readers, like myself, that there is adequate contrast between elements on a website page and the page background to ensure usability and to minimize eye strain. This is especially important for clickable elements, such as buttons and icons, and even more important when the elements are small. In the example you see on the screen, you'll see that the Submit button has a shaded box around it in light gray. When measured, the contrast ratio is at 1.2 to 1. There is also a thin line around the outside of that box, which is also the same contrast ratio against the light gray background at 1.2 to 1. It would be best to have a contrast ratio of at least 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 for the subject box shading against the background, and the line around the box could be thicker and of course have higher contrast. To make a website readable, it's important to use clear, legible fonts with proper size and spacing. Good font might be something like an Arial or Helvetica, and it's especially important in terms of spacing for people who might have conditions like dyslexia. And you must ensure that images and text are of high resolution, especially when they're magnified. Next, I'll show you an example of what happens when the resolution is too low on an image or on fonts. And as you'll see, it's very, very fuzzy and very hard to read. And also, you'll see that this font is particularly difficult to read without proper spacing between the letters. So, yeah, I think that shows it well. Also allow users, you should be able to have reflowable website pages. This will allow users to resize text without the loss of content or functionality. So it's very important to avoid fixed font sizes and text positions, and ensure that your website is responsive and works well on different devices, especially of different screen sizes. You'll see this example next. Here's an example of looking at a website on a smaller device, and you'll see the one on the left where the image is off the screen. The one on the right looks okay. When that image is off the screen like that, it means you're going to either have to swipe left and right or continue to pan back and forth to be able to read the website. This is very difficult for somebody with low vision, and it's quite tiring too.
Next, we're going to talk about multimedia. So for videos, we want to make sure that all video content are described properly, and all the speech are put in a transcript. And the most common problem with multimedia is to not have proper controls, and or autoplay is a huge problem as well. And then next we'll hand this to Simon.
So for a multimedia player, it's really important that there are controls to allow basic manipulation of the media. This can include things like pause and stop, play, and adjustments for the playback position, volume, and mute. And it's important, of course, as we discussed, that those controls are labeled clearly and using semantic HTML so that screen readers will see them as buttons and can keyboard navigate to them. And it's important to provide an effective method for navigating to the media player. This could be a landmark or a heading. What this accomplishes is make sure that if a user clicks a video and it's playing really loudly, they can easily find it and control that playback with their screen reader. It's also definitely important not to have autoplay. This violates WCAG and can cause some serious amounts of disorientation for people who use screen readers because they'll suddenly find themselves with a loud video that drowns out their screen readers. So here's a quick demonstration of a media player, an audiobook player that has some basic problems.
This isn't quite a worst case scenario for an audiobook, but it is definitely a bad scenario. The missing markup and metadata in the audiobook plus issues with the interface have made this experience pretty bad. So let's take a look around this interface. First of all, there isn't a single chapter in this audiobook where there would normally be previous and next chapter buttons. There's just nothing. We have
Skip backward button.
skip backward,
Skip forward
and skip
button.
forward,
Sleep timer button.
but no chapters button and no skip to next or previous chapter. We can play the book.
Scholastic
forward,
Audio
button.
presents
Skip through it.
Book 1.
Skip
It
forward.
down, plummeting into the trough. Shakily, she righted herself and began the long climb up.
Now let's take a look through this interface.
Minimize button. Car mode button.
Good so far.
Add a bookmark button. Progress 0. Adjustable
Okay, I'm assuming that's percent. If we adjust it,
10. 20.
The next 30-footer.
nothing
A
happens.
streak of forked lightning silhouetted her
progress.
against
1.
white water.
Adjustable.
She
It jumps right back to 1, so there's no way to actually adjust the book. Next,
Elapsed.
we have elapsed, but it doesn't say how much has elapsed.
Remaining in book.
It also doesn't say how much is remaining,
Remaining.
and I'm assuming that's remaining in current chapter.
Play button.
So this is pretty bad. I have no idea how long this book is, and I have no way to navigate it by anything except an unknown amount. It doesn't tell me how long the skip back and forward buttons go by, and I can't see the time elapsed or remaining in this book.
Skip backward button. Skip forward.
Let's also briefly talk about the labeling issues down here.
Sleep timer button. Sleep timer. Bookmarks button. Bookmarks. Playback speed button. Speed.
So those buttons are duplicated. Each one of them has a label and also the button associated with it, which is labeled. So this just makes navigation a little bit more inefficient, and it's not really clear whether you should be clicking the label or the button itself.
Playback speed button. Playback speed. Done button. Playback speed. 1.00 times. 0.50 times. Selected. 1.00 times. 1.50 times.
So this is really not flexible. I like to listen to my books at 1.25. It goes straight from 1 times to 1.5 times, and that's quite fast. Let's take a quick listen.
Selected. 1 point words.
two-masted, small for a schooner. Her deck wasn't much longer than the tallest of the waves. Her sails were down and secured, and she moved under engine power, steered gamely into the oncoming seas.
Yeah, so that's definitely understandable to me, but it's also a little bit uncomfortably fast, and I think that a lot of people would enjoy listening to books at a speed between 1 and 1.5 times. Overall, pretty subpar experience with both the app and the audiobook.
So that's an example of a fairly broken media player. And some of that was because of the book, but some of that was definitely because of the player having some labeling issues. Now let's hear from David about clear communication.
Thanks, Simon. It's important for clear communication to use simple language that is easy to understand. Important to provide definitions for any unusual words. And you should be spelling out abbreviations and short forms, especially for the first time, because somebody may come across an abbreviation that means absolutely nothing to them. And it's important to design and structure the page according to the audience's needs. For example, if you're writing a book for young readers or for children don't have large blocks of text to make it difficult for them to move through the book.
Okay, let's move on to testing and validation. It's important to regularly have your website tested using assistive technologies to identify any accessibility issues that might come up. Train your team on web accessibility practices and ensure compliance. It's also important to continuously test and update your website to maintain accessibility as content and technologies evolve. This is a really big problem. Sometimes a website will have amazing accessibility, and then a year later, somebody will add a new calendar widget or change the theme to update it, and the entire thing will lose accessibility, or some crucial part of it will lose accessibility, and you won't know until somebody reaches out and says, hey, this is broken. Which brings me to include an accessibility statement on your website that provides a contact point so that people can file accessibility concerns with somebody who knows what's going on. This is also something that becomes a big problem. The larger the company, the less likely you are to be able to contact somebody about accessibility and actually reach someone who understands. For small libraries, this might not be a big deal, but this can become a concern pretty quickly, and it can be really difficult for people who use assistive technologies to actually reach someone. So let's do a deep dive into accessibility testing. Accessibility testing is the process of reviewing websites, apps, and other digital content against common standards to assess the usability for people who use assistive technologies. This is best performed by qualified experts with a variety of lived experience with a disability. What may work for one person with one disability might not work for another person. So what might work for someone who is blind might not work for somebody who has low vision. The accessibility needs are actually quite different. And that further might not work for somebody with a learning disability. So it's really important to have that variety of testing so that different disabilities can be assessed. So there are different types of accessibility testing. Automated testing is usually using developer tools and browser add-ons and automatic tools so that they can assess the usability of websites. This doesn't really involve a human component. It's an add-on that will detect the low-hanging fruit. So for instance, it will detect buttons that don't have labels, images that don't have proper descriptions, and unlabeled form fields. Basically, it will detect some of the things that we've identified here, but it misses a lot of things. It doesn't really have the human component to it. It isn't interacting with the website, and if an image is labeled or a button is labeled, it might not know that that label is bad. So going back to my search button example, if the button is labeled magnifying glass, that test is going to pass because the automated testing tool is going to see that the button has a label, and it's not going to matter that that label is maybe unhelpful to certain people. It's just going to matter that it has a label. So the second type of testing is manual code review. This is typically reviewing code against the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines standard, and it's done by qualified professionals who have experience with WCAG and code review. This is usually also lacking the human component. The third type of testing is user testing. This includes qualified experts to ensure that the content is accessible using assistive technologies. So this is a lot. What's the best method, you might ask? The best method is keeping in mind accessibility from the start and consulting qualified accessibility testers with disabilities who can assess the website. But we know that this isn't always possible. So a combination of automated testing first, some code review by humans, and user experience and accessibility testing is really the best method. Although it sounds like a lot, automated testing can catch a lot of the really basic accessibility issues, and it's quite useful to do that first so that the actual accessibility testers don't need to test for so many issues. And when they retest the site, it's important to do that again to ensure that any accessibility issues haven't crept up. So let's talk about overlays and toolbars. Accessibility overlays are products depicted as automated solutions that modify the code of a web page in real time using JavaScript. Usually the way this works is you add a line to the top of the web page that incorporates this accessibility overlay or widget, and then the overlay will take over and do various things. It will interfere with the loading of the web page, and it will modify it to be supposedly more accessible as the page is loaded on the user's machine. These products are usually in the form of a plugin, app, toolbar, or widget, and the companies that promote the use of these accessibility overlays claim that their product automatically detects and fixes web accessibility issues. But unfortunately, the reality is that these tools often fail to identify even the most basic of accessibility problems in a lot of key areas. These can include keyboard traps that prevent users from using form fields effectively, missing links, focus order, quality and relevance of image descriptions. Like I was saying before, sometimes an automated tool can't tell if an image description is useful, it can just tell that it's there. Use of layout tables, closed captions, inaccessible captchas, and misidentified language. Basically, a whole bunch of the stuff we've talked about so far and a lot more. In other words, automated fixers can't work for the same reason that automated testing fails to work. So there are a lot of other resources that you can use to learn more about accessibility overlays. This includes the NNELS Accessibility Overlay article, the Accessible Libraries Overlay Info Sheet, the Overlay Fact Sheet, and the UX Design article, as well as the A11Y project. So what are traditional audits? These are usually compliance-based. In other words, you're testing against the WCAG standard to see if the web page complies with that standard or not. Usually it only goes up to WCAG level AA instead of AAA. This is really missing a human component. So people who do code review of web pages may say that something is compliant, and maybe it is compliant, but content can comply and still not be usable. So it's really important to have some user testing to ensure that things can actually be used effectively and that they aren't just technically accessible, but are truly usable and accessible. So usability testing is centered around real experiences and interactions with the content or product. This ensures that the content or product is not only accessible, but also usable. Those compliance issues that are identified in manual code reviews can often be fixed when people use the website and interact with it. If they're accessibility experts, they will often find the compliance issues just by normally interacting with the page and thoroughly testing every part of it. David.
Thanks, Simon. I'm going to read a quote by Jennifer Weldon of Caper, BC. She says, "As an organization that serves students with disabilities, we felt it was necessary to make sure that all our digital access points were as barrier-free as possible. It was important to us to have our websites evaluated by people with lived experience. Their report was extremely thorough and not only identified parts of the website that needed to be changed, but also for many issues, explain the impact on users."
So let's talk about the NNELS testing process. In our work at NNELS, we blend the traditional audit with usability testing. So we have a list of criteria that's based on the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, that we test against, but our team also interacts with the product as a member of the public. So we have real world interactions as a normal user might expect. So we specialize in testing reading applications and electronic reading content and websites. And some of our reports on reading applications have been made public, which can be found at the link in the chat, which is accessiblepublishing.ca/reading-app-reports. And now back to David.
And here's a quote from Laura Brady of Canadian Accessible Titles Database. She says, "No matter how accessible you think you are, the sophisticated and savvy testers at NNELS will root out any issues, from confusing wording or user experience to deep functionality issues. They help you polish your project and present your best face to the world. Their impact on the CatDB site was profound, from their enthusiasm for the project to their finessing of the details. It is a vastly better project because of their feedback and engagement with the site." Thanks.
So before we take questions, we just wanted to highlight some really useful resources that you can use to learn more about web accessibility. These are the Web Accessibility Checklist, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the DQ University Web Accessibility Checklist. If you have questions, we would like to invite you to email us, info@accessiblepublishing.ca, or you can follow us on social media.